Good morning, everybody. So I am in a different room. As you can tell, it's not the kitchen. This is my dining room. And I'm working on a new project. We're not doing food today. I'm working on a rag quilt for my new grandbaby daughter or granddaughter. And so I'm going to share with you what I've got done so far and some of the steps to get it finished. So here is what I have done so far. And if you can see, I've clipped all these seams. They're supposed to be 1/8 of an inch. I don't know that they're 1/8 of an inch apart, but they're less than 1/4 of an inch. So, you know, I'm heading in the right direction. So this is what we have done so far. The blocks in the center with the hearts, this is called an inlay. So I made, these strips were 3-inch strips. They started out as 4. And after sewn together with 1/2-inch seams, they come out to be 3-inch. So the squares I made 7 inches. So after they're sewn in, they're 6 inches. And then I made these little hearts to put in the center, and each one has a little pony on it. My daughter loved horses when she was a little girl. I suppose she still does. And so that's the theme that we went with on this. And I made a little template for the hearts. I just printed it off on cardstock and cut it out, and that was my template. I also embroidered her name to put on the back of the quilt, and this was quite an ordeal. I hadn't used my embroidery part of my machine for probably a year. So when I went to use it last weekend, I couldn't get the stitching to stitch out properly. It was advancing every time I'd make a letter, and like each letter has several layers before it gets to the satin stitch, which is this shiny part on top. It may do 2 or 3 layers of regular stitching, and then it'll do satin stitch over the top. And every time it would do a row of stitching, it would advance to the right, which wasn't correct. And so I took everything apart, I cleaned everything, I reset everything, nothing was working. And so I did that all day Saturday and Sunday. And then finally on Monday, I guess it wasn't this past weekend, it was the weekend before, I called a gentleman, and he's like, I'll come over and look at your machine. And I'm like, you really want to come to my house and do this? And he's like, do you really want to bring all that stuff to me? I'm like, no. So he came over and took it apart, cleaned it, messed with it for a little while, put it back together, and lo and behold, we're back in business. And believe me, I was beyond excited. I don't know. I was just, because I did not want to have to replace this machine. So, yeah, it was a lot. And, but when you do your embroidery, like this piece here is the flannel, which is going to be the back of the block. This is a tear away stabilizer, and this is a wash away stabilizer. So see how clear, like, it's almost just like a sheet of glue that's dried. So, but you put that on top. That helps to hold the nap down. Probably wouldn't have been necessary on the flannel because the flannel has a very low nap. But I didn't want to take a chance because I had attempted this so many times, and it finally was working, so I just wanted to do it once. This is a real big help when you're doing like fleece or towels. It's got a deep nap. If you just stitch over the top of that, your stitches will just get lost inside of there. If you put this wash away on top and then stitch over the top of it, what it does is it holds that nap down flat. And then you embroidery over the top of it, and then your stitches are on top instead of the fabric being on top. The other thing this is really good for is if you're doing a lace design, like a Christmas ornament or something like that. I've done a bunch of angels, and there's no fabric, it's just all thread. And you'll take like 3 layers of the wash away, and you put that in your hoop, then you stitch your design over the top of it, and then you wash that away, and all that's left is the stitching. And I usually don't wash it completely away because it kind of gives it some sizing, like if you were to, you know, put some starch or something on it, and it makes it stiff. So then you have a nice lacy design, whether you use it for an ornament or a bookmark or whatever you want to use it for. And the other part of this project I will show you is how I make the hearts. And we'll start with that because that's the next thing. So I took my heart pattern here and I laid it out on my material that had the little ponies on it. And so if you can see under here, I centered the pony on the heart so it would be in the center of the block. And then I took this, this is a very thin, you can almost see through it, a very thin iron-on interfacing. And this doesn't wash away or anything. This would be the same as if you were using it to stabilize a piece of fabric for sewing. And I am going to, I drew my heart on it, on this. I'm gonna sew all the way around. That's where we're gonna start. Let's see. Sorry. I need these glasses. I'm just making sure that my little horse is in the center. All right, here we go. And I'm going to use a little bit smaller stitch than what I normally would, because making the curves and stuff, it just makes a smoother curve, as opposed to a long stitch that would cause it to, you know, like when you turn it right side out, it's going to have like gaps where that long stitch is, and if you do little bitty stitches, it keeps your seam when you turn it all nice and smooth. Out to the point. So I'm going to stop when I get to the point, lift my pressure foot and turn so you've got a nice crisp point. And turn there to the center at the top. Okay, here we are, back around. I've got scissors everywhere here. Hang on a second. Okay, so we're gonna cut that off. Now I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna trim this pretty closely. I think I didn't choose the best scissors to do this with. I may have to switch to a different pair. Obviously, it's gonna take too long. So as you see, I'm dressed for work, which is yet to come for the day. I haven't left for work yet, but I did set my timer so that I don't go past when I should be leaving. And I was kind of leery. We had some storms moving through, and I don't ever plug my machines in when it's storming, just because we tend to get some lightning out this way. Okay, so I trimmed that down. I'm also going to trim off a little bit here on the point, and I'm not going to trim it too close because this interfacing, the iron-on interfacing is very thin, and it can tear real easily. Then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to snip these curve. I'll show you what it looks like. when I get it done. Here, I'll have to do the other side. I've been kind of wanting to do this in the evening, but it's been so gloomy when I get home after I feed and everything. I didn't really want to do anything. Okay, so you can see here where I snipped these here on both sides. I tipped off this, and I also cut a little split there. Now, I'm going to take these again because they're really pointy. I'm going to make a cut in my interfacing. Make sure you don't cut all the way through to your pretty fabric here. And when I put this together, I put the fusible part of this interfacing to the inside. So when I turn it, the fusible, this, and it's kind of, you can feel it's kind of pebbly. It's going to be on the outside. This kind of interfacing, when you iron it on, it tends to pucker a little bit with your fabric, and you can tell it's there. You can tell there's an iron-on interfacing there. Well, I didn't want that to show up on my heart. So I did it to the inside. So when I put it on my block, I'm going to iron it to my block. And there's 3 layers of it. So you'll never see any kind of rippling or anything like that. Okay. This is not a very safe thing to do, but I'm going to do this very, very carefully. Okay, so I poked that out, and now you see how nice and smooth that edge is all the way around. And this is what the backside looks like. And then here's the little slit that I turned it on, okay? So now, the next thing we need to do is we need to take I'm just going to tear this off. And I've already trimmed off all the extra threads and stuff like that. And anything left behind, this quilt has to be washed many, many times to get it to rag up like it's supposed to. So I'm not going to take the time to sit and pick all of these in between here off, because it will come off on its own in the laundry. Then this here is a tearaway, so I'm doing just that. It's tearing it away. And I do use a little adhesive, not on the wash away, because any liquid will cause it to melt. But when I put the tearaway on there, then I spray a little adhesive, fabric adhesive on it, and then lay my fashion fabric down, whatever I'm using that I'm going to embroidery on, so it kind of holds it in place. Just getting the bulk of it. The little pieces that are around the, like inside the letters and stuff, it won't hurt if that stays in there. It'll soften up. Like, it really won't go away, but it'll soften up when it gets wet. I just don't want any big pieces on there. Okay. Oh, here's one more. All right, so now you can see I've got that pretty much cleaned off, and this is all cleaned off. Now the next thing we need to do is cut this down to size. So I need to get my cutting board here. That Luna's over here sitting on. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay. So I already marked this before I took it off. You can see I put little dots on the corner because I cut this oversized so that just in case there was any error. Like sometimes it'll pull the fabric. It'll sometimes pull the fabric tighter whenever you do the embroidery. And I didn't want to have my block end up being too small. So now I need to get back to a 7-inch block. So I'm going to cut this back down to 7 inches. And I'm putting my, I'm looking at my marker. There we go. Which I just cut one of them off. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That one was a little bit long on that side. I'll straighten it up before I cut the other end. There we go. Put it on my thing here. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing at all. Oh, it's not gonna stay. Okay. I'm lining it up on this mat here too, which helps. And double checking again and again because I do not want to have to redo this. All right, and I had put a new blade in here the other day, so it's nice and sharp. Okay, get all this mess out of my way. And then now I have my quilt. Each block is 3 layers. So there's an outer fashion fabric, colored fabric, which is this. And then there's an inner layer of white flannel and a backing of white flannel. So the whole back is white. In the past when I've made these, I've always picked a color for the back. I opted not to do that because I want these seams that are going to be all ruffly and when it's been washed to really pop, and I wanted that to match the back. So now I have these 2 here, and I'm going to match these corners up as best that I can, and then I'm going to put little Addy's block on top of there. Make sure everything is square. So now I've got all those matched up together. Make sure all the layers are even. And now I'm going to move the stuff out of my chair. I'm going to put my stitch length back to the longer stitch length because it doesn't need to be short for this. And I'm going to sew from this corner to this corner and this corner to this corner. And this is going to hold all the layers together nicely when they're being washed. Because sometimes, even though everything has been pre-washed, sometimes washing it and drying it over and over, the fabrics might shift or something like that. This will prevent that from happening. Also, if you're not familiar with this big old thing on here, it's called a walking foot. And it helps whenever you're doing thicknesses of fabric. It helps move them through the machine a little bit easier. Okay, there's half of the X. Hang on. I didn't have a hold of that thread. So there's a thing called a spider, that you can use. And I do use it sometime when I'm running lots of strips through. And what it does is you put it under there and get it started, so that way when you pull your fabric, when you start sewing your fabric through, it doesn't, the threads don't get tangled up and it goes through a lot smoother. I usually just try to hold on to my threads or get them out of the way so that didn't happen, but I didn't do that. And on that point like that, it makes it a little more difficult. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now I have sewn through all 3 layers of this, and there's an X. You can see it better on the back, on that side. Okay, now let's see. I need to plug in my iron. I have my ironing board here. So I'm going to take this here. And this is going to be on the down side because I don't want to put that heart over the top of this. So I'm going to lay it down flat like that. And then if I figure out what I did with my heart, what did I do with my heart that I just made? Hello? Oh, here it is. Okay. It's early. Okay, so now I've got my piece here. I'm gonna move this way, you can see better. And I have my heart. I want to make sure that this is right side up. I wouldn't want to sew it on there upside down. And then I have my heart that I'm going to lay on here like this. And then I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure to make sure that I have equal amount of space on each side. So it needs to go up just a little bit. Check it again. Okay, so I have 1 inch all the way around. So when it's sewn in, when it's sewn into the piece, it's got a 1/2 inch all the way around because I'm doing 1/2 inch seams. Okay, this is hot, so I'm just going to tap it on here easily. And that's going to warm up that iron-on interfacing and hold it in place so that I don't have to use pins when I sew this down. Oh, there's any water in there to steam this. Okay. I'm going to plug that so now, see, it's not going to fall off when I sew it. So now we're going to switch positions and I'm going to move over here to Big Mama. This is my machine that was giving me all kinds of fits, and I managed to get somebody that could come and work on it, and now it's all back in business again. So I forgot to change my embroidery foot off of here. We're doing on time. Okay, so this is the embroidery foot that I use. So all those stitches, your needle moving all around, it goes in that big hole right there. Keeps you from breaking the needle. And let's see. This is the foot that I need to sew. And I'm just going to lift this up and drop it back down so it's in the slot that it needs to be. I know this isn't a very safe thing to use scissors for, but it is what it is. I can't find my screwdriver. It's in a tote somewhere. Okay. All right. So the reason I'm switching is because I have the pink thread on this machine, but it might have been easier just to switch it over to the other one. However, this one has a threader on it, and even with my funny reader glasses on, I have a hard time getting them threaded. That one has a threader on it, but it hasn't worked in years. I maybe should have had the guy that was here working on my machine look at my threader. So, okay, here we go. So now I'm going to top stitch this on in place in pink. Oh, it didn't thread. So, okay, let's try this again. I think it's testing my patience today because it knows that I'm in a hurry because I need to go to work. Okay, let's try this again. And I'm stitching this down with a very pale pink. It's the same pink that I used to embroider the name on the back. But the back, the bobbin thread is white. So it'll, aside from the stitching line, it'll blend in with the white flannel on the back. To that point, now I didn't backstitch when I started to secure that, but I'm going to backstitch when I finish, and it'll automatically do it for me. And it's also got like this feature that does like a holding stitch, and it just puts like 4 or 5 stitches all in one spot real quickly, and it kind of sets that. So now, oh my gosh, this looks so cute. Okay, here we are. So here's where I stitched it on. See, I just went right around the edge. And by using that thin fabric on there, on the back, that facing, it made it very, very nice and smooth. And then here's the other side. So you can see the heart around it where I stitched the heart on, and then the X that went through the center to hold all the pieces together. So now this block is all ready to go. And then now I'm going to show you how I did the strips. So each strip is 3 layers as well. So you have your fashion fabric or your colored fabric. You can also do these as inlays instead of like this, which would be, you'd use 3 layers of fabric that's going to shred when you wash it. And then you would take, kind of like I did the heart, you would put your fabric that you wanted on top. So it may be any color of anything. You could use cotton, denim, whatever you want to use, because you don't need to worry about it ragging. But I took and I sewed down the center of each of these like this. And that holds these 3 pieces together in place. And it also serves the same purpose as the X did on the square. So that way when it's been laundered, it doesn't shift as bad and doesn't, you know, leave puckers and wrinkles and things like that. So we're going to do that one on this. And I also trimmed off the salvage edges, which I will do that after I have sewn it all together. let's start at this end. This quilt was very, very easy. I've done them in the past with blocks. Generally, 5-inch blocks, 5 or 5.5-inch blocks. And they really turned out cute, you know, with doing a little pattern or something on them. And that snipping is just a lot. Like, it really is hard on my hands. And I thought I would give this a try. I don't know if there's any less snipping, but it's in long rows, because snipping around the corners of each of those blocks can get kind of tedious sometimes. Okay, let's see here. Where's my, I thought I had my snippers here somewhere. I'm not sure where they are. Oh, here they are. These are the snippers that I used. I'm crawling over cords. I have no idea where I got them at. Probably Joann's or Walmart. There's no brand name on them. It just says China. And it's got a little thing here that holds it closed. And they're like this. So they're very, very sharp. Has a little sheath thing that goes over the top to protect you whenever they're not in use. So, okay, well, I've only got a few minutes left before I need to leave. So I'm going to go ahead and end here. And then we'll be back to finish up putting the rest of this quilt together. I will see you soon.